A big warm welcome, a good morning, a good afternoon, a good evening, depends where you are in the world. This is our kind of first community webinar that is a global webinar. It follows on from the global conference held in December that I know many of you were at. And the purpose really is for families to learn from each other, to be able to, exchange thoughts and ideas. Everybody's different. So some of the topics that we are hope will be discussed will come from your ideas, from family ideas. These are sorts of things you'd like to be listening to or contributing to or presenting at. We're kind of, very open to that. And even if we have very small groups at some of the webinars, that's good too, because we've all got different interests. Okay, so Catherine and Alex are both with me, and Lex is going to kind of lead this discussion. Catherine is going to support our IT, so if there's any problems, please do just kind of shout. And the topic is how I managed my diabetes. And as I said, all different, but it's an opportunity for you to kind of chime in with some of your experiences too. Welcome, Annette, just seeing you there, just giving you a wave. Okay, so if we go on to the next slide. Thank you, Catherine. So I'm just going to do some very brief introductions. My name is Anne. I work for AS UK. My role is to do some of the global outreach and support those of you who want to present and want to do topics and want to talk about things. So part of my job really is to help facilitate. Lexi, who many of you will know, will introduce herself shortly. And she is she's currently the vice chair of AS UK. And many of you will possibly have met her or seen her presenting before. Next slide, please, Catherine. Okay, so this is just an outline of tonight. We're anticipating spending an hour together. We will try and answer all of your questions, but where we don't know the answer to a question, we will, because we're going to record everything, we will try and find that out and come back to you about it. And it's unlikely to be directly after the session, but we'll go away and we'll find out the information and send that out to you. Catherine will turn microphones off to mute. And the reason for that is to ensure we don't have any background noise. I know some of you may have dogs, little children, wives, husbands, clattering. So it's really just to ensure that people can hear as clearly as is possible. The session today is in English. I know some of you have shown some interest in translating some of that. And we can, as I said, we're recording it. So potentially for those of you who are keen to try and translate, we'll be able to then send the recording to you. Should you have a question a little later, you just click on the mic button and you'll be able to unmute yourself and ask a question. And for those of you who are used to using Zoom and your computers, you can type a question into the chat box. So as it says the last line on this slide, just says session today will be recorded and photographs taken to use on our social media channels. Should you not want to have your photo used or anything, please let Catherine know and we will just turn cameras off. But please do let her know. You can contact her again through the chat box or later. I think I'm going to kind of guess many of you are now familiar with using Zoom and some of the Zoom buttons. So it's relaxed, it's informal. Let's not worry too much about the IT and hope it stays with us. Okay, at which point I'm now going to turn my camera off and I'm going to pass you over to Lexi. Over to you, Lex.
Hi everybody, thank you all very much for coming this evening. So tonight is kind of a very informal session. I'm going to chat for a little while and then we'll kind of open up the floor and kind of get it interactive. So as Anne said, I am currently Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees for ASUK. I am a patient myself and was diagnosed around the age of 10. And although I was diagnosed around the age of 10, they suspected Alström's from about age of 5. But until my diagnosis, my journey kind of didn't sort of develop too much. I am now 30 years old. I live in the southeast of England. I am a guide dog user, and I have a lot of the general characteristics of Alström. So I am virtually blind, I have hearing aids, I had heart failure when I was 6 weeks old. Tried to keep the weight down, but sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. I have some of the kidney problems, and most kind of important in some people's lives, and kind of the thing I find the most difficult sometimes to deal with is that I have diabetes. But I'm a little bit unusual, so I actually have type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So my body doesn't produce any insulin of its own like a type 2's would. So I require insulin via injections, although I now am on a pump. But my body is still resistant to the insulin that I put into it, which is very common with Alström's. So I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes when I was about 9 years old. I didn't really have a lot of symptoms that would be classically shown by somebody that maybe has undiagnosed diabetes. As a Alström's child, I was always very hungry, a bit obsessed with food, but I didn't really kind of have a lot of the symptoms, or at least my parents didn't recognize any of the symptoms if I had them. When I received my diagnosis around age 10, they did a battery load of tests, and diabetes was one of the tests that came back positive. So from then on, I went on to metformin, which is a diabetic drug that we use very commonly here in the UK. And that is to help with insulin resistancy, to help the body to accept either the insulin that is injected, although this wasn't the case at the time, but more so with Alström patients, they use this drug to encourage the pancreas to continue and increase the amount of actual insulin that it produces. And I'm still on this medication today. So I began taking that medication, and within a week I lost over a stone in weight, and had some quite severe side effects from that. They build the medicine up gradually, and after about that sort of first month or so, the side effects then kind of went away. The main way really that I managed my diabetes as a child was through diet and exercise. I had quite a strict diet. I had very low sugar, not a lot of sweets, and this did not make me very happy. I liked my sweets, I liked chocolate, but I think most of all is that I noticed that I was different from the other children. My packed lunch that I maybe had at school didn't contain crisps or chocolate bars or, you know, the really sweet, unhealthy treats that my friends had. So I found that very challenging. Exercise wasn't really a problem in terms of I was a very active child. I used to swim, cycle, horse ride, just run about, dance to music. So I was a very active child. So the exercise wasn't so much an issue, but I did not like the strict diet that I was on, and I rebelled against that quite a lot. So as I became a teenager, my sugars were quite difficult to handle. As diabetics become teenagers and go through that transition period, hormones obviously are flying around the body, and that can have a massive effect on someone's blood sugar. So that took a bit of more kind of intervention. And again, because I was a teenager, I had a little bit more free reign. I could go out by myself, I could go out with my friends and such. And I did not always make the best choices in the terms of what I ate or drank. You know, and obviously as I got a bit older, I turned 18, and obviously then alcohol came into play as well. I was diagnosed with type 1 when I was 16 years old. After a period of being extremely poorly, I ended up in the hospital because my blood sugars would not come down at all out of about the high 20s. And I was not eating anything at all, and I was very, very poorly. So it was kind of deemed that after all of the medical interventions that they tried, and with the help of one of our clinicians that was leading the Alström team at the time, that I required insulin. So they started me off on insulin injections in the hospital, and I came home with these injection pens. So I had gone from taking 2 to 4 tablets just once a day to now having to do multiple daily injections. But in some ways, the injections made my life a bit easier because my diet could be a little more relaxed. Now, I couldn't eat as much sweet treats as I wanted, you know, I couldn't drink sugary drinks, that kind of thing, but it didn't have to be quite so strict because I was on the insulin. So that obviously took time to get used to, and there were a lot of different kind of factors within you know, having to manage the injections, and manage the injections when you're a visually impaired person as well can be quite challenging. Obviously now I am on insulin, I have to do my blood sugars 4 times a day, because obviously the insulin will affect that a lot more than potentially diet and exercise will. So that came with its own challenges, because trying to do a finger stick test when you can't see is incredibly challenging. I got blood everywhere, I got the sticks in the machine the wrong way round. The blood came out of the finger and was all over the machine, all over me. It was so challenging. And although there are blood glucose machines that will talk to you, they'll read you the reading of what your blood sugars are, actually getting to that stage is quite challenging. So again, I kind of rebelled and maybe did them once a day. And obviously as a blind person, I read Braille at that point. I didn't want to be stabbing my fingers because then they'd be really sore and sensitive and I wouldn't be able to read my Braille. You know, so there are lots of things to kind of consider as a blind diabetic, I suppose. And, you know, and things that people don't even think of, like if you are trying to be an independent blind person and you're getting your own food, or you get, you know, your own shopping, it can be very difficult to tell the difference between a regular Coca-Cola bottle or a Coca-Cola Zero bottle, because one of the labels is red and one of the labels is black. You know, so sometimes you don't even know about the sugar that you may potentially be ingesting. So that can be quite challenging as well. But obviously I'm 30 now. I have continued with my insulin for many years. About 3 years ago, I actually went onto an insulin pump to help manage my insulin levels, because they were still a bit crazy and a bit all over the place. And probably about 5 or 6 years ago now, I also discovered some monitoring devices that were able to monitor my glucose levels where I didn't have to prick my fingers. So this is one of the devices that I found first was a Freestyle Libre, which is made by a company called Abbott. And then recently, about a year ago, I moved on to a continuous glucose monitor, which is called a Dexcom, and that is made by the company Dexcom. So I can talk a little bit more about these later, but these devices, they talk to my smartphone, they some of them have alarms, and so it means that I very rarely have to prick my fingers anymore, generally only if I have a low blood sugar, just to check how low it is. You know, so these devices have really kind of revolutionized my blood sugar control, my awareness of what my blood sugars are, what they're doing, and really been able to kind of help me tighten my control around. But the thing is that it's not easy. Diabetes is a battle that you have to deal with every single day as a diabetic person. And it is a battle. You know, 1 minute you're high, the next minute you're low, and you're just a bit kind of like, I just want it to be somewhere in the normal range. And there are so many factors that can contribute to high sugars. There's infection. If you're poorly, if you have a cold, you may not necessarily feel cold, but feel ill, sorry, but your sugars are a bit out of whack. There's hormones, there's stress, there's, have I eaten something wrong? Have I done not enough exercise? Have I done too much exercise? You know, have I had some alcohol? Because alcohol can lead to low blood sugars in a diabetic person. Have I eaten too many carbohydrates, because carbohydrates turn into sugar? Have I not eaten enough carbohydrates, and that's why my sugars are low? There are so many factors that contribute to blood sugars that it can be such a battle sometimes. So I think it's really, really important as a diabetic person, but also as parents, as carers, as medical professionals, that you don't expect perfection, because perfection is not achievable. I think what is achievable is education, knowing about what your body's doing, how things, you know, will affect your body. If I choose to eat a bag of sweets, how will this affect my blood sugar? You know, what may I need to do to counteract this bag of sweets? You know, and be supportive and not have those really high expectations that are not achievable. No diabetic person that I know has ever really achieved 100% in range, because it's not really achievable. But, you know, we do our best, we try every single day, you know, and you have to interact and engage with your diabetes, otherwise it gets a bit out of control, and then you can have some really serious kind of consequences. So the Dexcom I've used for about a year now, and it is a continuous glucose monitor. So regular finger prick tests will give you a snapshot of what your blood sugar is at that minute that you do the test, which is excellent and can inform your choice about eating, about medication, etc. But obviously, as I mentioned, for a visually impaired person, it's quite difficult to do those tests. So a Dexcom is a continuous glucose monitor, sensor and transmitter that the diabetic person will wear. And they will wear this either on their arm or their abdomen. But if they are under 17 years of age, they can also wear it at the top of their, I think their lower back, or sort of the upper part of their bottom. And it's a very small device. There's a picture of it on your screens now. And you wear this device for 10 days. And on top of the sensor, slips into it a transmitter. And that transmitter will then transmit your blood sugars every 5 minutes to an app that you have on your smartphone. So it makes the connection via Bluetooth, and you can have your readings on your phone every 5 minutes. So if I just open mine, you will have to excuse the numbers that are on there at the moment. So this is what you will see on the app. So this is my current blood sugar, and then this graph at the bottom is what it has been doing for the past couple of hours. The dots that you can see on the graph are where the sensor has actually taken a sugar. So each of those dots is a different reading. And then if you turn it this way, you can see the graph in a bit more definition. So you can tell that earlier today, I didn't start the day off very well. I had quite high sugars, but over the day, they have come down, and now they're in a reasonably good place. So that's just the viewing app, but then there is also another app that goes with the Dexcom that shows you a lot more information. It can create reports, and those reports can be shared with clinicians. The Dexcom also has a capability where somebody can follow you. So my partner has the Follow app on his phone. So when he's at work or we're not together, he can check up on me, see what my sugars are doing, and the Dexcom will also give you alerts and alarms. So if my sugars go too high above a certain range or go too low above a certain range, it will give you different alarms and different warnings, as well as an alarm before you will go low, so that you can kind of get those preventative measures in. So because it has that follow capacity, my clinicians at Birmingham and the hospitals that we have in the UK, they can all log into my information. They have my permission, and they can see what my blood sugars have been doing over 3 months, 6 months. And so it gives me a lot better control with medication kind of tweaks. This device has completely changed my interaction with my diabetes. I became a bit desensitized to it. I kind of ignored it for a while and never really did a lot of blood sugar tests because the tests were painful, they were messy, I always had to have somebody to help me. Whereas this Dexcom, the insertion process is literally, you take the paper off, put it against your skin and push your button. It's easy, I can do it independently, I don't have to have any help. And I can access all of my blood sugar ratings. The app works pretty seamlessly with VoiceOver. So for people that don't have any sight at all, it's very accessible. And it's just really sort of changed the way that I'm able to interact with my blood sugars and actually take care of myself.
Lexi, I wonder if you'd be good enough to hold that up again in front of your face to camera.
Yeah.
So that I can attempt to describe it for those who can't see it, and for those who can see, we can kind of clearly get a sense of it as well.
Which one do you want? The one with the circle or the graph?
The one with the graph, I think.
Yeah.
Because that kind of gives a real sense of it. So
is that or not?
Yeah, lovely. So what Lex is holding up is the screen of her phone, which has a black background and then white numbers and the white line, which indicates what's happening to her levels throughout the day or whatever she sets that to. If you tilt it a little bit, because it's gone off.
Oh,
that's it. Okay, thank you. It's okay. So that you can set that for, you know, a time period, and it's automatically gathering all of that data for you. We sound like saleswomen, we're not, but it's very much, you know, one of the things that in your day-to-day life is looking at bits of kit that can help. And as Lex has just said, it's one of those things that's really kind of changed her kind of daily routine, her daily life for her. Okay. Thank you, Lexi. Do you want to carry on? I'll turn my camera off. Thank you.
So that bit of kit has really kind of sort of changed the way that I interact with my diabetes. So the company Dexcom, I currently have the Dexcom G6. They have, I believe, within the last couple of months, brought out the G7. So they are working on the devices all of the time. They bring them out. They make sure that the technology is as good as it can be, is that the connectivity is great. Kind of looking at the software, just the same as kind of any kind of cell phone company or company would. So Dexcom deliver me a 3-month supply through the post, and within each box comes all the sensors that I need, a transmitter. So the transmitter will last for 3 months, whereas the sensors that you have to insert just under the skin, they only last for 10 days. So you keep the transmitter and throw the old sensors away. It's all really, sort of simple and easy to understand. There's great kind of support from them as well. So if you have any problems, and actually the sensors are really comfortable to wear as well. You don't really notice them. I began sort of worrying that I was catch it or knock it off. And obviously as a visually impaired person, we have accidents. But that really isn't a problem. It's generally really comfortable. I forget that it's there, to be perfectly honest. And so that's great. The only kind of negative thing with the Dexcom is that if you have low blood sugars and it has warned you, the Dexcom will either say that your sugars are lower than they are, or it cannot catch up as quickly as a finger stick test. Because the sensor sits in your subcutaneous fluid in your arm or your abdomen, the speed at which your blood sugar changes when you are having a low blood sugar is too quick for the sensor to keep up. So unfortunately, when you have low blood sugars, they do suggest that you do a finger stick to check and to treat a low blood sugar. So it can be a bit of a negative, but all of the positives outweigh that kind of one negative, really. So here in the UK, I am extremely lucky that we have a National Health Service, and I have received funding from that National Health Service to fund my Dexcom. I know in other countries, people aren't so lucky, so some people have to pay for the Dexcoms privately, but also another way that they can get access to them is through an insurance company and through medical insurance. But if the Dexcom is not an option for you because it's too expensive or any other kind of reason, there is another device which I have used before, which is called a Freestyle Libre. And this is made by a company called Abbott. And again, very similar. It's a wearable device, but I apologize, that is my guide dog grumbling. It's a wearable device, and but instead of it being a continuous blood glucose monitor like the Dexcom, you have to take your smartphone. Again, it's an app, but you actually have to scan this device to get access to the blood sugars. And the blood sugars on that kind of sensor, you have to scan it at least once every 8 hours, otherwise you may lose some of the information. But I used it for a number of years before I went onto the Dexcom. It's a great system to even just as a step up from finger stick tests. I believe that so I only used the Freestyle 1s, but I believe now there are the Freestyle Libras 2s and 3s, and I believe that they have alarms on which are similar to the Dexcom. You know, so that even just as a step up from fingerstick test was a great way to begin to tighten my control about my blood sugars and to understand where my blood sugars are going and what they are doing. So Anne, if you don't want me to say kind of anything else or any other points, I'm happy to open for questions.
No, I think that's perfect, Lexi. I think that gives a great kind of backdrop to some of your experiences. And as we started off by saying, everybody, of course, is different, but you know, whatever can be used to make life a little bit easier. So we're going to go on to the next slide, which is just around questions and answers. And I will just facilitate some of the Q&As. We'll take everybody off mute. I know we've some questions that have already come in. If you can use the chat box, great. But if not, you know, just kind of wave if you're if you struggle with that. But I'm going to go over to the Nailers first, if I may. Deborah Naylor, they had a question that they actually sent in.
Yeah, Deborah has just recently gone on insulin.
Okay.
Right, at the moment, her blood sugars are all over the place.
Yep.
And it's all been blamed on carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, you know, at the moment, as you said, right, you know, it's either high, it's low, it's never easy, and she's either starving herself or she's sort of, you know, it's hard, it's difficult. So just wondering, you know, well, basically, what is the answer, if there is an answer?
Okay, no, that's a great question. Thank you very much. Can I ask how old she is, please?
I'm 40.
40.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can kind of, I mean, I'm not medically trained, so please don't take my answer as, you know, as kind of medical advice. From my own experience, when I went onto insulin, my sugars were extremely high when I went onto insulin, and it was also a very long time ago. But it does take a while. Obviously, you're injecting a hormone into your body, and there are lots of different types of insulin. There's you can have a short-acting insulin, you can have a long-acting insulin. Some pens are mixed, so you have the short and the long in the same pen, and that can be quite challenging. So it does take time, possibly like a couple of months, more so than weeks. But you should definitely, or she should definitely see an improvement, you know, quite drastically if the insulin is kind of taking the effect that it should. The carbohydrates can play an extremely important part in blood sugar. When a carbohydrate is broken down by the body, as a carbohydrate, it's a very complex molecule. As it gets broken down by the enzymes in the body, in the stomach, and in the bowel, it then becomes a very simple molecule, which is sugar. So when you eat a carbohydrate, it does eventually turn into sugar and then have an effect on the blood sugar. There's lots of different kind of carbohydrates. There's simple carbohydrates, there's complex carbohydrates. So an example of a simple carbohydrate would be something like obviously just straight sugar, or something like fruit that can be simple. Whereas a complex carbohydrate is things like brown bread or brown pasta, because the body takes a lot longer to break those kind of things down. When I went onto an insulin pump, I went on a course that taught me how to count carbohydrates and how to adjust my insulin doses to the amount of carbohydrates that I was eating. but that has to be done under medical supervision, because if you adjust your insulin, obviously you run the risk of highs and lows and all the kind of things that I know she's experiencing at the moment. But it does get better. I'm sorry, I'm not sure which country you guys live in, but try
Wales.
Oh, Wales. Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Okay, so yeah, try to get help from your diabetic nurse. They can be really useful kind of resources and to connect with. You know, and even if it's the diabetic nurse over at the clinics in Birmingham, if you attend there, it's tricky, you know, but you will get there. And I think the thing that I find the most beneficial is kind of to educate myself around kind of food and what that does to the body. And you do find, like, if I eat baked beans, my sugars absolutely skyrocket. So it's kind of finding the foods that kind of trigger those high blood sugars, and that, but it takes time. It is a journey, and there's good days and there's bad days, and you just kind of have to roll with it, unfortunately, but it will get better.
Cheers, thanks.
No problem.
Thank you, Lexi. And there was a medical disclaimer in there. I'll just flag that one up again. Okay, let me move on to Marina. Marina is in Italy. Marina, some of you may know, she runs the Italian Association for People with Alström. Welcome.
No, I was just wondering a few things. That was really lovely, Lexi. You're so clear in explaining everything, so thanks very much. But when you were describing the graph, does the screen reader actually describe that to you, or how were you able to report all that information to us?
So I don't believe the screen reader reads it. I'm going to check now quickly for you. I don't believe the screen reader reads the graph.
It doesn't.
So so the circle that you saw, it reads my levels, and then
Okay.
Trend graph.
Yeah, so it just says graph, and then if I turn it onto the
Trend graph.
Yeah, so it just says trend graph, but when it's this way round, if I touch,
6.9 millimoles per liter and is constant. No description available.
So it will describe, it will read me what my number is, but it won't describe the graph, unfortunately.
Okay, but it gives you all the info you need.
Yes, it generally does. And what you can do, so there's a secondary app that you have to download, which is called Clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of like the data analyst side of the app. And within that bit of the app, which is fairly accessible, it will tell you all sorts of things, like you can create reports that you can send over to your doctor. You can see things like the time that you have been in range, your targets. So that gives you a lot more of the data that it kind of collects in the background. And as a medical professional, if you follow somebody through the Dexcom cloud, which is like the bit that goes up in the air, then that they can access all of that information that the Dexcom obviously collects. But yeah, as a blind person, that kind of graph isn't great. So I actually don't take any notice of it, really. I just kind of pay attention to the numbers and kind of what I then need to. But because you get it every 5 minutes, sometimes I just sit and watch it and just kind of see what's going on and stuff. So yeah, unfortunately the graphs aren't accessible though.
Amazing though that it can do all of this.
Yeah.
Then there was another question I was going to ask you, but you actually answered that, and that was about whether the NHS covered the expense, and so you answered that. But you did say it's very expensive. So can you give us an idea of the price of this? Is the pump? This Dexcom is the actual pump.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. Yeah.
So again, don't quote me because I may not be completely correct.
No, don't. Just to have an idea.
So I believe that the sensors are, let me get it. I believe it's about an average of £200 a month.
Okay.
And that will, so because mine come in sort of 3-month batches, I'm not quite sure, but I believe the way that it works is if you pay the, I think each sensor is about £50. And so they would send you the transmitter, obviously, to begin with a couple of sensors. And then obviously you don't have to pay for that transmitter for another kind of 3 months. So I think it's that the transmitters are maybe about 200 and the sensors are about 50. But yeah, in where we have the NHS, you have to kind of fit into the NICE guidelines to access the funding for it. Whereas in other countries, I know there's that the medical insurance will cover the cost of it. But yeah, it can be quite expensive, which is sometimes the reason that some people will choose to buy the Freestyle Libre, because their sensors are, I believe, £48 each. And those sensors last for 2 weeks at a time. So you only spend just over kind of £100 a month versus obviously the more expensive cost of the Dexcom.
Okay. And I imagine you need after sales service because all sorts of things can go wrong with this sort of thing.
To be honest, I don't think, touch wood, I think I've only ever contacted the tech support once.
Okay.
I think I've only ever had, again, touch wood, I think one maybe 2 sensors fail, and that's generally because I've walked into something and knocked it off.
Okay.
Once you know how to put them on and kind of how to connect it all and everything, it is fairly straightforward and quite independent. With the Freestyle Libre, I needed help to put them on, because you had to connect 2 parts of the sensor together. With this one, it's all quite tactile and it's quite you don't really need to look at it. It's what you can do it all by feel. Really.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Lexi,
Thank you.
Can I just support your answer?
Sorry, go on, Trevor.
Sorry, can I just support your answer to Marina? I like Lexi. I also use Dexcom. To be fair, Dexcom as a unit is £159, Marina. That's obviously English sterling.
Right, yes.
For that price, you get 30 days worth of things. So you get like 3 sensors, 1 transmitter, and the technology you connect to. I found it again just like Lexi with a sight impairment, finger prick testing in the past, diabetes control. It is one of the best things that I've ever come across to use. Yeah, I was personally sick and tired of finger pricking my finger, not feeling the stuff. Yeah, to have this consistent 24/7 monitoring, enables you to have this pattern. So the graph, I guess, that yes, you can't use, we can't see it, and it doesn't screen read. But what it does develop, if you're sharing your information with people like the hospital and the clinicians, they form this regular pattern. They can see those dots plotted, they can see your figures, and they can work out very quickly, the pattern that you already see. So when you have your breakfast, or you might have a high, then during the day it all goes down. They can plot that graph, and day by day by day, it just it formulates a very, very similar pattern. Yeah. Dexcom support is brilliant. I've had issues with Dexcom. It fires a very, very, very fine wire into your arm, just below the skin. That's what that mouse-like contraption looks like with that big button. It fires that in. Yeah, that does it's a little sharp itch when you press it in and release it. Yeah. The issue that I've found with Dexcom, the support I've needed, is because that wire, unless you put it in what I would call a soft element of your top of your arm or your sort of like your lower back, has to be quite a soft skin. If you're tense or it's not soft, that wire does not fire in, and therefore then you don't get the readings, and then you're phoning Dexcom by saying, look, I've got this failed sensor, just because. But their support is excellent. Their customer service is brilliant. All they ask sort of thing is that you give them the code from the box, or they ask sometimes they'll send a package and you return that particular sensor, and they will then have a look at it and see what the problem was, if it's a firing issue or the wire issue or whatever else. I mean, so their support's brilliant. And answer the fact that obviously it's supported by the NHS. My understanding is at the moment the Alström patients are part of a trial from Birmingham, from the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and I think that trial is around about 12 months. I'm not sure if it's been extended, so it's not covered by the NHS, and yes, you can buy it privately. At the moment, I think we're part of a trial, so that's why we're getting the supplies free. I don't know if that trial has been extended. I've not heard personally if that trial has been extended or where we are in that. But I mean, yes, it could come to an end. I hope it doesn't, just purely because it's the first time, I guess, even for a visually impaired person, for a piece of equipment that actually works for us.
Right.
Amazing.
Lovely. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. Also, we'll take a note of those questions around the cost and see if we can't dig around and find out more, and kind of follow up from that. Okay, I've got kind of a question coming through from the chat, but Laura has very patiently had a hand up, so we're just going to unmute Laura. Laura's in Ireland, I believe.
Yeah.
Welcome, Laura.
You can hear me okay?
We can.
Yeah, first of all, Lexi, very informative, brilliant. Thank you for all the information I've learned tonight. Just out of curiosity, it's more a technical mind with me. The Dexcom, and then you've got your insulin pump. Is there any way of interacting the two? So it indicates if your insulin level goes down or you need insulin, that the Dexcom can detect it and let your pump know?
So yes, that there are pumps out there that will do that. So within sort of the UK, it is generally kind of considered by the medical professional that only type 1 diabetics will require an insulin pump. Whether that's true of Alström patients or not, I can't really comment. I know there are quite a few patients on insulin, and whether a pump would make their life easier or not is a different story. And the hoops that I had to jump through to get it were quite a lot. But yes, there are pumps coming onto the market now. It's quite a new technology, but there is a pump called the Tandem T Slim 2. No, sorry, that's a lie. Yeah, Tandem T Slim. And their new pump has it's a program called Basal IQ in it, and basically it links up with the Dexcom, and it will either suspend your insulin if you are going low, or it will give you what is called a micro correction if it can see that from the Dexcom information that your sugars are going up. So yes, there are pumps that will interact with each other, not all of them, and the suspending feature is quite new. But there are more pumps out there coming, I think, that do that. Unfortunately, my pump doesn't talk to my Dexcom. Hopefully, within the next upgrade that I get, so within an insulin pump, you have a contract for about 4 years. So hopefully by the time I get my next upgrade, which should hopefully be next year sometime, I may get the next generation of my brand of pump that would hopefully talk to the Dexcom.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very informative.
No problem.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so I've just another question that's come through the chat box, but I'm just checking if Anne Cheesebrew is still with us because I can't see her. Yeah, I can see it. She is.
I am.
Hi, Anne.
Hi.
Hi,
fantastic, Lexi. Thank you very much. That was really informative.
You're
My
very
question was about the graph, really, because it comes out in black and white, and whether you can change the colour.
Yes.
Of that. You can, okay. Because it was a question of a young person who's just been diagnosed, so it was.
Okay. So my phone is actually on invert.
Okay.
Because I don't have a lot of vision left, but because I have a little bit, I find that the black background absorbs the glare more than the white does. So if I can,
7:57 p.m.
oh, shush.
Notifications.
Stop talking
Also
at me.
graph.
So that's what it would look like.
Okay.
I don't know.
Hold
if
it. Can you
I
hold
don't
it
know.
right up to the screen next?
Like that.
No, come over a bit and hide
This
your.
way.
No, the
The
other.
other way.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, that's a bit clear. Yeah, that's fine.
Lovely. Yeah. Is that your new phone, Lexi?
Yes, it is my new phone.
What happened to your old one?
My partner ran it over twice with his car.
Sorry, had to get that one in.
Yeah, that where I was referring to, blind people have accidents. But that is my latest accident.
Perfect. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks, Lexi.
No problem.
Okay, so I think we're kind of just kind of within our hour, if you like. So if we go on to our next slide, and I can just summarize some of that for you. What we're now planning to do is gather some of those questions together, put something together around top tips. And what we'd really appreciate from you is anything to do with managing diabetes, whether you're a family member, you're an adult who uses whatever, send them over to us so we can do a little resource pack on top tips on managing, your diabetes at home. This tends to be for the adults. This is our over 18s, really. And we'll put that together, kind of send it out to people, then put it onto our website. And we kind of got this idea. We might do a bit of a short YouTube explanation of the top tips. And again, would love to hear your views on some of that. If you think that would be helpful, if you think that would be useful, or even if you think, yeah, actually, I'd really like to do that myself, please, volunteer, put your hand up. So that's kind of just to summarize what we're going to do with the information that we've listened to, your what Lex has said, your questions and things. And the other thing that we kind of really want some help with, and some of you have answered this when you registered today or whenever you registered, is some sense of what topics you'd like to hear about going forward, or even if you'd like to present a topic. If there's something quite specific, a couple have come up from this session earlier, which is people wanting to know a little more about what research is going on. So that's one topic that we think probably we will try and explore and pull some people together who could potentially, give us an update on what research is taking place at the moment, whether that's in the UK or anywhere else in the world. So there's those two things. Now, Catherine has kindly put in the chat box her email address, which is catherine.lewis@alström.org.uk. You will find that as well on the Alström UK website. The Alström Association Italy has also got links to our website, and we've got links to theirs as well, as we have with the American Association too. So you'll always find Catherine, and she tends to be a font of all knowledge and will always get back to you. The next bit is very much a kind of request. If you haven't come across it, or you don't know about it, or you are a clinician, please promote the AS Global Patient Registry. This is our kind of giant filing cabinet where we're trying to gather as much information together so that researchers can delve into that. There's no problems with privacy or any of that. And if you'd like more information, again, please get in touch with us directly. So the last slide really just summarizes what topics you want to hear about, what we're going to do with the top tips today and the resources, just our websites on there. And then, of course, the Twitter and Facebook addresses so that you can exchange information with either ASUK or with each other, or if you want to get in touch with somebody, you know, please contact us through any of those routes and channels. So I'm going to leave the last words to Lexi to say thank you very much. And, you know, big thank you, obviously, to her for kind of sharing her personal story with us. And she will just want to encourage you to do a couple of things. Over to you, Lex.
Will I? I don't remember those bits. Thank you so much for everyone for coming tonight. I hope that it's been really, you know, useful, and that, you know, my experience can kind of help you to make your own or your children's kind of experience of diabetes a bit better. Please try not to be the food police. My parents were the food police, and it's horrible. I think, you know, diabetes has to be part of your children's lives, or as an adult, your life. But, you know, life isn't perfect. Sometimes it's okay to have that bit of chocolate or that bit of cake. You might just have to go for an extra walk or an extra dance around the room to burn the sugar off. So, you know, yeah, please don't be the food police too often. Encourage your children to exercise, move about, even if it's, you know, just dancing around the lounge or bouncing on trampoline, or, you know, any kind of movement is good movement. You know, get them involved with the housework. If, you know, it might not always be the best thing, but, you know, just please encourage your children to move, and your adults, you know, to move and exercise, because that really does help with blood sugars, with insulin resistance, you know, and also, you know, mental health and you know, endorphins and you know, just kind of overall happiness. You know, try not to expect perfection, because it doesn't exist, but just try your best. And if it doesn't work, then just try again the next day. You know, try not to get too frustrated with things. There's so much in life that can stress you out and you can get frustrated with. And if you're adding diabetes on top of that, not only will it make your sugars worse, but it will make you feel worse as well. Please ask for advice if you don't, you know, have the answers or you have questions. You know, please come to AS UK, your fellow clinicians, you know, Facebook, Twitter, you know, where everybody is here to help. But yeah, if you guys still have questions, please find me on Facebook or Twitter. You know, I also have an email address for AS UK, so you can please, you know, email me through that. And yeah, but just learn from each other. And you know, everybody is different. Every Australian person is different, but you know, we all find a way through our journeys together. So thank you very much for coming. Please register on the patient registry if you haven't done so already. And thank you very much for coming, and hopefully we'll see you all again very soon.